On today's edition of the Cowboys Report, looking at the ESPN top 10 rankings of quarterbacks that have come out, plus the QBs that just missed out. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'm going to raise the panic level on Luke Schoonmaker up one notch based on what the Dallas Morning News has written. And Justin Simmons rumors, for some reason, have now emerged for the Cowboys. This is the July like battle status, by the way. The Raiders have closed ground on us. We are now barely up by 1,000. They cut that lead in half. Do not let the Raiders catch up to us. Like the video. Let's make sure we come out on top this month. So ESPN doing their position ranking series here. Top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Dak Prescott did make that list. However, after being number 9 last season and then following it up with the number 2 MVP voting season, second team All-Pro, he actually dropped down one spot. He was as high as number 7 and as low as unranked. I'll make note that all the QBs above him got a top 5 vote, some of which makes sense, some of which do not. Here is the ESPN top 10 QB list. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I do think that top 4 is right. Even if you want to argue who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, that's fine. I think those are your 4 best quarterbacks. Then some interesting spots. Matthew Stafford is 5, which he was 10 last year, skyrocketed up. Justin Herbert, 6. CJ Stroud was 7. 8 was Aaron Rodgers coming off the injury. Jared Goff is number 9, who also jumps Dak in this conversation. And Prescott was number 10. Here's what one NFC executive told ESPN about Dak. He always does well enough to be in the top 10, but never gets over the hump. He makes all the throws. He's playing the position at a high level, but something's missing. There's a lot of factors in that, from the running game, play calling, defense. And Dallas hasn't won in a long while. But certain guys are going to elevate their team late in the game, and Dak doesn't seem to do that. Something similar from an NFL personnel director who I think phrased it in a little bit better fashion. He's lacking that high-end ceiling. Plays the position really well, but not an elite passer that Mahomes and Allen are. They need to support him in those big matchups. He's really good, but not quite good enough to elevate the entire team in those matchups. I actually think that's all pretty fair and accurate because that's what we've seen come playoff time several seasons in a row. He's not the same caliber of quarterback as Mahomes, Allen from a physically gifted skill set. I think that's absolutely accurate. I also think that some of those same critiques apply to several of the quarterbacks above him. I think there's an uneven application of the standards here. We're talking about not elevating the QB in big games. Dak beat multiple of those quarterbacks ahead of him and outplayed the quarterbacks in those games. But the other guy gets put ahead of them for whatever reason in the end. So we'll come back to this more in depth, and I know this is always a fiery conversation. Where do you rank Dak Prescott among NFL QBs? He's not 1. Let's not be crazy here. I don't think he's top 5. Where would you rank him? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. I think he needs to be top 10. And to be fair, there's a lot of good quarterback play right now. But dropping the MVP runner-up honestly doesn't make a ton of sense to me when we're skyrocketing other players on that list. Look, I think overall, there's a lot of really good quarterback play right now. Not the same Mahomes, Allen guys, but if you was about like fringe top 10 quarterbacks, yeah, the 10 that they just mentioned, and the honorable mention list also has really good quarterbacks going on right now. Brock Purdy was number 11. Jordan Love, if you ignore the first half of the season, it's like 2 quarterbacks that played better than him down the stretch last season. Hurts was not as good last year. I'm fine dropping him from that list. Any argument you would make against Dak Prescott applies probably even more so to Tua, by the way. Kirk Cousins to maybe a similar extent there. I would not be surprised if Trevor Lawrence is back in the top 10 conversation. He was really good to start. You kind of want the inverse of the Jordan Love campaign. Good to start the year, and then got hurt and did not play very well down the stretch. I'm also not taking Jared Goff over Dak Prescott. I get the Lions had a great run. That's a better coaching staff with better play calling and, frankly, a better supporting cast overall. I am also very confused why Stafford jumped from 10 to 5. This ESPN list has always been super high on Stafford. Even coming off the injury last year, he was still in that top 10 range. I am surprised to see him jump as high as he did. if we're going to make the argument that Dak didn't elevate his team in big games, which is, times is very much true, we're going to put Herbert on that list? Like, ugh. I think he should be, but same application of standards, right? I'm also very anxious, by the way, about some of the older guys. Aaron Rodgers coming off the injury scares me. Like, Rodgers will be a Hall of Famer. Dak right now is absolutely not. But for 1 year, I'd be a little bit anxious coming off the torn Achilles. Maybe give him more benefit of the doubt because it's Aaron Rodgers, but that is a red flag for me. Also, Dak beat the Lions last year, and would have beat the Dolphins too if the defense could have gotten stopped. Now, you can get the Cowboys turnover chain, speaking of the defense here, by going to chatsports.com/Cowboys chain. It is the same chain I'm rocking, minus the different color of the chain links there. Links will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. Chatsports.com/Cowboys chain. I might be reading too much into this, but Dallas Morning News did their top 5 breakout candidate list, mostly expected names. 2 tight ends on that list, even with Jake Ferguson on the roster. And it was Princeton Fant and John Stevens Jr. Nowhere was Luke Schoonmaker on that conversation piece. So my first thought was, okay, you got Jake Ferguson. You're predicting 2 breakouts at tight end. Where does that leave Luke Schoonmaker? I still think Schoonmaker makes this team. The way his contract is set up, you're not going to move on from him so quickly. And the Cowboys almost never move on from draft picks that quickly. Like, it pretty much just never happens. That's not how they operate because they like their guys, right? Now, Schoonmaker was a colossal disappointment in year 1. There's no way around that. It was that entire draft class, because Overshow got hurt in particular, really, really disappointed relative to what the Cowboys opened for in terms of an impact. So I'm reading tea leaves here. Flags going off on that front there. So are you worried about Luke Schoonmaker and his potential impact short-term, long-term as a member of the Dallas Cowboys? Y for yes, N for no. Go ahead and sound off for me in the comments section of today's video. However you slice it, Luke Schoonmaker was a bust in year 1. He did not contribute remotely like he needed to. With the emergence of Jake Ferguson, I just need Schoonmaker to become a good tight end 2 option. I don't need him to start. I need him to be able to block, catch passes, and that actually does unlock some extra offensive elements. We spent all this time talking about who's going to be your wide receiver 3. Well, what if Schoonmaker earns those roles and you can do more 2 tight end sets? That kind of changes your numbers a little bit in the running game and the passing game. Now, look, I might be reading too much in the Dallas Morning News breakout list of 2 other tight ends, Fant and Stevens, over Schoonmaker. But both of those guys getting hyped over him, when I saw that, alarm bells started going off in my head, because you're picking 2 younger tight ends and going from undrafted free agents in the same class as Schoonmaker to, you know what, they're going to break out. Red flags left and right. So I am worried about Luke Schoonmaker. It is a key training camp coming up for him. We are making progress on beating our sub numbers from last July, but still have some room to go. Hit that sub button at youtube.com/@CowboysTV. Help us beat that number and, frankly, crush that number on today's show. How about Justin Simmons and the Dallas Cowboys? Simmons kind of accidentally or not created this viral moment, whatever. He was rocking one of those upside-down Dallas hats. The ones I'm talking about, the one that the Ben DiNucci company right there, at his Florida youth camp. So you got a guy from the Northeast who played his entire career in Denver at a Florida youth camp wearing a Dallas hat. That's weird. Simmons, I think, is one of, if not the outright best free agent left unsigned on the open market. I think he'd be a good fit in the Mike Zimmer defense. We talked about Simmons of the top 5 free agents who could start, right? Because he's so good. Safety is not a need for Dallas. They have Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson. I think Marquise Bell's going to go back there to safety number 3. Wanye Thomas is there. You could maybe try Israel Mukwamu as well. They've got pieces. They've got options in the back end. But it is Justin Simmons. You know, this would be one of your biggest free agency signings in a long time, even if it is in the mid to late part of July. So would you sign Justin Simmons if you ran the Cowboys? S for sign, P for pass. Go ahead and sound off for me in the comment section of today's show. Justin Simmons is I think the best NFL free agent left at this time. His ability to play in the box, back deep, strong, free, whatever you want to call it, I think he'd fit really well in a Mike Zimmer defense because of his interchangeability. I think he'd be a fantastic addition for the Cowboys. On the field, it makes sense of just you're adding talent to an organization. Safety is not much of a need, and I think that could cause issues from the Cowboys' organizational perspective. Most importantly, in theory, Simmons is out of your price range, even if it is July. If you go above $5 million per year, Dallas ain't going to pay you. They've done that like once in the last 10 years in free agency since Brandon Carr. They just don't pay it. Also of note, Dak Prescott, Justin Simmons, well, they just so happen to share the same agent. And I don't know how great that agent-front office relationship is right now, which doesn't actually narrow it down very much, but specifically for the Todd France one there, I don't think that's a good thing for Dallas. I don't think you're going to be able to have that great relationship of the agent steering them to you. You'd have to win the potential bidding war. And that's just not how Dallas operates in free agency / at all.